What's good, YouTube? So today we have a special guest on our channel by the name Jeff NIPPARD. He's from Canada. So we all know where Canada is. We have a lot of Indians over there in Canada. So today we are going to interview Jeff NIPPARD. So I know all about Jeff, but I'm sure you guys have no idea, or maybe most of you don't know who Jeff NIPPARD is. He's I think you just started your channel, right? Like maybe a year back. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's been going for a while, but I've started documenting my bodybuilding journey now for about a year. Yeah.
Yeah. So Jeff is a fellow YouTuber and also he's a natural bodybuilder, a professional natural bodybuilder. So instead of me talking about Jeff, I leave it to him. So Jeff, just introduce yourself to our audience and tell them who you are.
Sure. Well, Shreyas, first of all, thank you for inviting me to come on your channel. It's a real pleasure to be here. In terms of who I am, like you just said, I'm a natural pro bodybuilder. So I have competed here in Canada and won a number of junior provincial titles. Then I went on to win the junior national title for natural bodybuilding here in Canada. So we have a national show that is actually drug tested. So I won that title. After that, I went on to win my pro card in California at the Natural Muscle Mayhem. And since then, I've done one pro show where I came second in my class. So that's basically been my history as a bodybuilder. I also coach other bodybuilders. And then the other side of me is that I'm also a power lifter. So I've actually competed as much in powerlifting as I have in bodybuilding. And I guess my claim to fame in that arena is my bench press. My personal record is 370 pounds at about 160 pounds body weight. So at one point that was enough to get me the Canadian national record, but it's since been broken a few times, which is the nature of powerlifting. It's just always evolving. And then other than that, I have a Bachelor of Science in Biochemistry. So I try to apply the knowledge that I've earned as a result of my education to bodybuilding. And so I take what I would consider to be a science-based approach. And then also I do take into consideration in-field, in-practice knowledge. So things that we just know from guys who are really good at bodybuilding and from just our own experiences. And I think that that's about it.
Yeah, so for Indians who we use in kgs, right? So I would like to tell you how much he benched actually. So 370 pounds comes somewhere around 150 kg, I guess, or 160 kg, I'm not sure. So 160 kg, see here in India it's different, Here powerlifters, by the way, did you do it raw or equipped?
Well, that's raw.
Okay, so raw. Here people who are like around 80 kgs and who you do it equipped, right? So they are like benching around 170, so 170, 180. So that is the thing, because here people follow a basic kind of training. They don't use periodization techniques and nothing like that. So they just perform the same. If a person X and there's a person Y, right? Both of them follow the same routine, which you shouldn't be doing actually when it comes to training with a proper periodized program. So anyways, so that is Jeff for you. He is also a power lifter, and he's known to have a huge chest and also huge calves. So his calves are pretty big. Okay, so that is Jeff. Now a simple question: how long have you been training for?
I first picked up a weight when I was 15 years old. So I've been at it for a while. I'm 25 now, so about 10 years. And that's about a full decade of pretty hard training. When I get into something, I tend to get all into it. So yeah, it's been 10 years, man. And a lot of people will see my physique or hear about my lifts, and they're like thinking that because I'm young, maybe I've only been doing this for a couple of years, but it's been a decade of solid work, and it does take time.
Yeah, exactly.
And Shreyas, one quick thing, I just did a calculation in my phone. I don't want to undersell myself. I think it was around 170.
Oh, yeah, 170. Yes.
That eventually. Yeah.
So
no worries. I'm not good with the conversion either.
Yeah. So 170 kg bench press, right? So it's not that he's only good at bench press, his squats heavy as well. Okay, so anyways, moving on, you told me that you're training for 10 years, right? And you started at 15. Okay, here when you're 15, people are not allowed to train by their parents. So what their parents say is that your height, right? Your height will stop growing. So that is a big misconception that people have over here. Like even though people go into the gym until they're 18, they're not allowed to squat. They're not allowed to do overhead presses because they're told that their height will stop. Okay, so that is a big misconception here, and I think people lose that age, right? 15, 16, 17, that is when you actually tend to grow. But here, people are not allowed to train when they are young. So, next question is, why did you choose to stay natural? Okay, why did you choose to stay natural? That is a big question from my side.
Yeah, that's a good question because, as you probably know, as a natural bodybuilder, so just so everyone knows, natural just means you don't use steroids or any other banned substances like growth hormone, insulin, that sort of stuff. And so I guess at first it wasn't really a consideration for me because I didn't even know it really existed. Like I didn't think that anyone was using drugs. Then when I realized that, well, hey, a lot of the guys that I'm looking up to in these magazines are taking tons of steroids, I was kind of like, oh, well, this sort of sucks. Like, I guess I won't be able to get to look like that. And I would say around the age of 18 to 19, it was a huge temptation for me. And that was about the first time that I started looking into competing in bodybuilding. And I did my first bodybuilding show at the age of 19. And I remember thinking to myself and even saying to my coach that, yes, I want to do whatever it takes to win this show. And that's the mentality that a lot of young guys have who are first into bodybuilding. It's like, I'm doing my first show at 18. There's no need for me to start using steroids right away. You know what I mean? And I realize that now, but at the time, it was so tempting to me that I even said, yes, I'll do it. And I told him I'd do it. And it just so happened that the shipment of steroids or whatever it was didn't end up coming in. I didn't end up getting them. And so I never did take them for that show. Then after that, I realized that there's such thing as natural bodybuilding. So at the time, all I knew was Muscular Development and Flex magazines and the guys competing in the IFBB who are all enhanced. So after I discovered guys like Lane Norton, I started following guys like Skip LaCour and Jeff Willett and Alberto Nunez and these big names in the natural bodybuilding community. And I said, well, hey, if I can look like that naturally, then that's all that I ever wanted, you know? So it was at that point that I realized that I should probably put my health first and decide what it is that I really want out of this. And so I continued to do it naturally, and then it sort of became valuable in and of itself to me. Like I liked the fact that there's no other outside variables. Like I don't have to play around with my hormones and that sort of thing. Like I just know this is what I have to do with my training. This is what I have to do with my diet. And this is the sort of result that I can expect to get. So in that sense, it simplifies things. And also, I think I just like the look better. I like the fact that the waists aren't really distended. It's more of like a classic sort of like 60s or 70s bodybuilder type look, generally speaking. And so I like that a little bit more than a lot of the steroid users, especially abusers, will tend to get more of like the bloated, puffier type look, which I'm not as much a fan of. And now since then, you know, I'm a natural pro, so there's really no changing that at this point. I've basically built myself as a fitness entrepreneur off of the fact that I'm natural and I value competing naturally, and I'm so embedded within that community now that it just wouldn't make sense for me really to switch camps at this point.
Yeah, there was a time when I thought of taking steroids as well, especially when like I competed in a very local show, you know, like a very local show. Of course, there is nothing called drug testing here in India. There is nothing called drug testing here in India. So I just competed. I didn't even know that something like steroids existed at that time because I was like 19 year old. So I won the local show. Luckily, I won the local show. And then I went on to the state show. Okay, that is when shit got real. Okay, I stood with 70 kg people and I was literally smoked. Okay, even though I was the most shredded person out there, the muscle mass they had at the same weight was much more than what I had. So I thought, well, they must be taking something which I'm not taking, right? So I went to the gym, I asked the guy who was a trainer there, what do you take? So initially he told me creatine. Okay, this is how it is. He told me he took creatine. Okay, so I was stupid enough to, okay, fine, let me try out creatine. I took creatine, I moved on, I didn't get shit. Then I learned a lot about anabolic steroids and stuff. So there was a time when I actually wanted to take it because as you said, I'm going to do whatever it takes to excel in the sport, right? So later on, I found out the health effects. People are getting gyno, people are getting acne, people are not looking good. And as you said, I like like a classic bodybuilder, you know. So that is when I decided no. And of course, as you said, there is a huge market for natural bodybuilding. For example, the people who I train, right, are people who are in their 30s who just want to lose fat. So they are not one of those who will go for steroids or anything like maybe even growth hormone, right? So that is why I thought, why not have a market for natural bodybuilders, like people who want to get to their goals naturally. So that is why I thought, and one more thing, man, look, here in India it's very bad, okay? If you look at somebody, even though you have abs or you are, maybe look at me, you saw my pictures, right? I look like bloated and stuff now. Still people think that I'm taking steroids. That is how the standards are over in India. It's very low.
Mm-hmm.
So to win a competition or to win a show in India, all you need to have is abs. I've never seen a guy with the shredded glute in India. Okay, it's hard to find. Okay, so even though they are on insulin, they are on growth hormone. So that is the thing about training over in India, man. It is not up to the mark as of now. So that is why I'm getting you into the channel, because here, as I told you in the mail, people look at the biggest guy. Okay, people don't look at the smartest guy, people look at the biggest guy. So that is a shortcoming over here. So now let us move on to some of the technical stuff and talk about natural bodybuilding. So we are going to talk about natural bodybuilding here. So now we all know that there are bro splits, there are different kind of splits you find in bodybuilding magazines and stuff. But we all know that when you train naturally, you have to follow some other stuff as well, like maybe periodization, which is not essential for beginners, but still there are different kind of stuff. So I want to ask you how training naturally is different than maybe a person who is taking steroids.
Okay, yeah, good question. So I don't have any professional experience with steroid users. I tend to only work with natural guys because that's my area of expertise. So I don't have any like hands-on experience with this, but what I do know is there was a study published in the 90s that looked at 4 different groups. So they had one group that trained naturally, so like you or I would. They had another group that took steroids but didn't train. Then they had another group that took steroids and did train. And then they had a group that just didn't train or take steroids, right? It was a placebo group. And what they found was that the group that took steroids but didn't even train got more muscle mass gain than the group that trained naturally.
Oh, shit.
So basically, over the course of that 10-week study, they found that steroids alone, even without resistance training, is better at putting on muscle than training naturally with resistance training. So I don't want that to be an encourager for people to take steroids. That's not the point. But the point is that if you are taking steroids, I think it does shortcut the process a little bit. So when training naturally, I think from a psychological perspective, you need to be prepared that, well, hey, I might have to put in 10 years of work before I really start to look like Jeff, or I start to look like some of the top natural pros out there, right? Because it just takes more time, right? And the scientific literature supports that. Other than that, I think that one of the good things about steroids, or quote unquote good things, is that it allows you to recover faster. So you can get away with doing more. As a natural, if you're following some of these programs like you alluded to that you see in the bodybuilding magazines that are just crazy high volume, like 3-hour marathon arm workouts and this sort of thing, you're probably not going to be recovering from that as a natural. So you need to be aware of where your limitations are and sort of work within that. Not that you can't push your limits, but as a natural, you do need to keep in mind that you don't necessarily have the same capacity to recover as an enhanced guy would. And that's especially true of powerlifters. Powerlifters who are running extremely high volume, very intense routines if they're enhanced, then they might be able to recover from that. But if you're natural, then that's a surefire way to end up with an injury, I think. And you have to be really, really careful as a powerlifter when you're handling heavy loads and high volumes. So that would just be one thing. And other than that, I don't think there are a lot of differences. Like, we're still humans, so we still respond to the same sort of stimulus. It's just that the steroid users get a greater response for any given stimulus.
Yeah. Okay. So there we talked about just a couple of differences between training naturally and maybe training enhanced. Now let's assume that I'm a guy who is going into the gym for the first time. Okay. Even though I'm a male, this applies to females as well. So what would you suggest they do? Because I'll tell you what happens in India, and I'm not talking about maybe a couple of gyms. This happens in the whole of India, and you know India is a very big country, right? So every single person who enters a gym, this is what he's told to do, okay? So this is the split how it goes, and I think this is very common. So we do chest on Mondays, back on Tuesdays, shoulders on Wednesdays, arms on Thursday, Friday we do what else? Maybe any other muscle, and Saturday will be an off, abs. And actually here people are told to do abs every day. That is also another thing.
Oh, okay.
So the Saturday would be off, or some of the guys might train their legs. Okay, so Sunday will be an off, and Monday they repeat the same thing. So what would you do, or what is the right thing for a beginner to do when he just enters the gym?
Good question. My first thought there was that I know that you are immersed in the culture in India and you feel like you have an outsider perspective insofar as you know that there's a science-based community out there and you want to share that with everyone else. And I think that that's wonderful that you're doing that. But it is rampant everywhere else too. Like here in Canada, in the States, you're still going to run into the same bro science, people caught up in the same myths and all of that stuff. So it is a global problem, if you want to call it a problem. But I understand that it's probably frustrating for you in India.
Yeah.
I can almost hear your frustration as you're talking. You're not a fan of bro science, right?
No, man, I was like one of the biggest bros. If you watch my video, maybe the older ones, right? I was the one who used to say, you can't drink milk while cutting, you should avoid fruits and all these things, you know? I was that kind of a bro, but suddenly, and also I used to use very bad form while performing exercises. So then I ran on to people, as you talked, Lane Norton, 3DMJ and all these people, and Lyle McDonald, and I didn't even know who Lyle McDonald was. See, people, most of the people look at Lyle as one of the guy who criticizes others, right, for their stuff. But Lyle also has a good side of him where he puts information on his website, right? So I went and started reading, and that is when I came to know that my idol at that time, Arnold, I was following Arnold's blueprint, some program called that. It was like chest and back, like you had to do 40, 50 sets, okay, per workout. I was able to do it twice. After that, I just couldn't do it, okay.
Yeah.
It felt like I was dying. So that is the reason why I wanted to share it with people. And of course, it's very bad in India. You know, there are YouTubers from India, and they're limited. Maybe there are 4, 5. Okay, 5 YouTubers from India who are popular, and there is a guy called Sunit Sebastian. I don't know if you have heard of him, but there was a time when he was making videos like very scientific videos, and people from the West, right, everybody watched it. So I thought, okay, finally there would be someone who will help the fitness community in India. But the problem was the fitness level in India is not such that people can understand maybe such terms. Like maybe if you use a term called periodization, people will be like, what the okay, you know, like people will be like that. So they'll not understand. So I try to make my videos as simple as possible, and try to let people know about stuff. And when I talked about flexible dieting in a video of mine, where I showed that I was eating, maybe even drinking Diet Coke, okay, once in a while. So that video got a lot of hate. Like here, the thing is simple. The only way to diet is eat brown rice, dry chicken, and maybe a few veggies. You're not supposed to eat any kind of processed food. It is true in a sense, but still people are not yet, they're not so aware of all these things. So that is why I bought you, because look, it is the truth that if you get somebody outside of your country and they talk about all these things, they tend to believe more. Okay, so that is how it is. Indians tend to believe more people who are not from India and from the other countries. And of course you have a great physique as well and experience as well, so maybe you can help me out in this.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to. Yeah, in terms of knowledge and like acquiring the right knowledge, I think one of the most important things you can do is separate someone's physique and how they look from the information that they're putting out there, and just look at the information for what it is. Because like we've already said, someone might not have a clue about how to train and how to diet, but they might just have the right combination of genetics and drugs and get the results, right? Or they might be doing a bunch of stuff that just doesn't even matter, like eating 8 meals a day and saying, you know, this is what I did, this is what worked. And you realize that, well, it was actually because they were eating the right macros just by coincidence. Exactly. And that was why they got the results, not because of the 8 meals, right? So you need to always think critically and think, okay, does this make sense? If this person didn't have a good physique, would I still think that this information made sense,
Exactly.
right? And so when we look at guys like Lyle or even Lane Norton, they might not look as impressive as, say, Ronnie Coleman or someone like that. But when you actually analyze information that they're putting out there, you see that it's so much more scientifically scientifically sound and valid and so on. Not to hate on Ronnie, it's just a random example, but you get the point.
Yeah.
So for someone who's new to the gym, I think that a big thing when you're new is finding a sweet spot between getting results, which is motivating, and then also finding something that's going to be attainable for you or maintainable for you. So something that you can adhere to over the course of time, right?
Sustain.
Because some guys who sustainable, yeah. So people who try to do too much at once is really, really common. So you come into the gym, you're excited, you're motivated for whatever reason, and you just want gains now. Like you want to put on 30 pounds of muscle in a month, right? You want to have what the magazines tell you can have. But oftentimes those routines aren't sustainable. And if you're going to be successful as a natural, then you really need to think long term. And so you need to find a program that you're going to be able to stick to. And I think that that's the single most important thing. If you're not sticking to your program, it doesn't matter how good it is, you're not going to get the results because you're not doing it, right? So you have to be able to follow through. And I think a big part of that is finding a program that you enjoy and that you're able to recover from. If you're feeling beat up and super sore after every session, you can't walk for a week, then a lot of people end up not following through with that sort of a program. So I think that slower and steadier is typically the way to go. At the same time, you don't want to go so slow and steady that you don't get any results because then you feel unmotivated as a result of that, right? So just as an example, my brother, he's 18 or 19 years old and he is totally new to lifting. He hasn't really lifted before. He's what we would call, I guess, a thin guy. Like he's kind of got the classic ectomorphic body type, really fast metabolism, a much lighter guy, lean but not a lot of muscle. And so he's busy with school, and we set up him on a routine where he would train 3 days a week. He would do an upper body workout, a lower body workout, and then one full body workout, right? And I think that that's a good routine. If guys want to be in the gym more often, I think another really good routine is upper, lower, rest, upper, lower, rest, and then that's your week of training. So you'd be in the gym 4 days a week. And Lyle McDonald has a really good program. Maybe you can link it in the description or something, but it's just Lyle's generic bulking routine. I think it's more of like an intermediate type program, but if you're any sort of guy who has like any bit of athletic background, I think you could jump into Lyle's bulking routine pretty easily as long as you don't jump the gun and try to handle heavier weights than you can handle. So that's another one. And then other than that, if you're a guy who's like super ambitious, you're very athletic, you have an athletic background, maybe you've already been training for a year kind of on and off, then a general push-pull legs is another good program. So you push-pull legs, rest, push-pull legs, and that puts you in the gym 6 days a week. And a lot of guys who are new to this want to train, right? And if you want to train, then telling you to take 3 days rest a week might be too much. Like I wouldn't be able to do that because I fell in love with training pretty much right away. So I was like, I want to be in the gym as much as I can. And so I think that a push-pull leg split is better than Monday chest, Tuesday back, Wednesday legs, that traditional bro split, which I think is, other than just like literally chest, probably the worst split you can do.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Now, as you told that it is training muscle one times a week is not that good, right? So there is a reason behind that, and you talked about it in your video today. You think you uploaded a video today, and you talked about that.
Yeah.
So just let people know why it is important to train your muscle frequently, maybe at least twice a week, right? So there is a reason for that, and I think you should mention that now.
Yeah, for sure. So first of all, I want to say that training your body part once a week is a heck of a lot better than not training it, right? So you can still make fantastic progress on the bro split. And there are pro natural bodybuilders who have run the bro split, just like we said, and it is a viable way to make progress. It's just not the best way. to make progress, at least not based on the evidence that we have. So there was a study published this year that looked at, I think it was 12 different studies that looked at groups that ran bro splits, so those body part type split, one muscle per day splits, versus a higher frequency split. So they're training either upper lower, push-pull legs, something that has them training at a higher frequency. And the conclusion of the study was that 2 to 3 times per week tends to be the sweet spot for hitting a muscle to max out your growth. More than 3 times a week might be better, but we don't really have any strong scientific evidence to support that. But we can say pretty clearly that hitting a muscle at least twice a week is probably the way to go. The reason for it isn't completely clear, but it probably has to do with the fact that after you train, there's a transient increase in the level of muscle protein synthesis. So your body basically becomes more responsive to protein feeding. So if you have a meal with chicken breast in it, you get more out of that meal because you trained yesterday. And that response lasts about 24 hours. Okay, so the 24 hours after you train, each meal with protein in it that you have after that training session is like more anabolic than if you didn't train at all.
Yeah,
does that make sense?
Yeah.
So after somewhere between 24 to 48 hours, so 1 to 2 days after you hit a muscle group, that increase in anabolism comes all the way back down to baseline. So muscle protein synthesis levels when you're eating protein 2 days after you trained is pretty much just as if you didn't train. Exactly. So in theory, you should be able to hit that muscle again. So let's say you hit chest on Monday. All of your meals between Monday and Wednesday are extra anabolic. Come Wednesday, your meals aren't any more anabolic than they normally would be for your chest. So it would make sense you could hit your chest again.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Yeah. So the only consideration in doing it too frequently is, are your other body tissues recovering? So if you're doing super heavy bench press on Monday, your shoulders and joints might still be a little bit achy and tight by the time Wednesday comes around. So just because you can do it doesn't necessarily mean you have to do it. But there's certainly a good case to be made based on the research for training at a higher frequency. And I think that when we look at the data as a whole, at least 2 times a week, you should be hitting every given muscle. And if you have a weak point, so say you have underdeveloped abs, you mentioned that a lot of people in India train abs every day. I actually don't think that that's a bad idea. At least every other day or even every day would probably give you better growth than hitting them once or twice a week. Yeah. So training at higher frequency is fine. You're not going to wear your muscle down, and a lot of people think that if you train too frequently, then your muscles are just going to wear away, but it doesn't work like that. Everything is back to baseline after 1 to 2 days for the most part. So high frequency training is great for building muscle.
But the thing about training abs here is different. The trainers tell the people to train abs every day for the reason is that they're told that if you train abs every day, you'll burn more fat from that area. That is the reason why they are being told to train their abs. So we all know that spot reduction is not a reality, but here people do, the side twist and side bend and all these things. Right. So it is kind of, if you see that in a gym, you will find it very irritating, right? You'll be like, what the fuck? But that is how it is, and we can't go and talk to people. So anyways.
Yeah. So ab training, you want to think of your ab training like you do any other training. You train it to make the muscle bigger. If the abs are bigger, they're going to show through more, but you have to get lean. Yeah, you just have to lose your body fat in order to see the abs.
So that is the thing about training scientifically. Now, nutrition is a big thing. So in India, now if you see a person eating brown rice and chicken, right, it is confirmed that he's on a diet. Okay, that is how the people look at it. If you are eating maybe a burger, the only thing you're going to do is you're bulking. You're not cutting. So here the thing is, when you are bulking, that is the only time you can do flexible dieting. Okay, when you're cutting, you have to follow like 3 times a day of brown rice and chicken. Maybe once a day you have your shake and maybe some casein shake in the night. So that is how a basic diet is here in India, and people look at supplements as something magical. Okay, the most number of questions that I get is based on supplements, like, bro, can I take this supplement, bro, which is the best? See, people ask this question as well, bro, which is the best whey protein? Okay, I can understand if they ask me about whey protein, but they ask which is the best brand. I know that there is something called amino spiking, but their question is not based on that. They think that different companies have different stuff inside the tub. Okay, so that is what
Yeah.
they think. So that is what we get. Now, like, what do you think about flexible dieting and how it actually can help you in the long run? Not in the short run, I mean the long run.
Right. Yeah. I think of it like, how does this saying go? I don't know. Maybe you've heard of it. It's like, if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. If you teach a man how to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. Have you heard that
Yeah,
before?
yeah,
Yeah. So
that's
I think of a meal plan kind of like giving a man a fish. It's like, here's something you can follow for like the next 8 weeks or whatever. But are you going to follow that for the rest of your life? No. Usually people come off their meal plans and then they get fat again,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
So the good thing about flexible dieting is that you understand the meal plan. You understand what it is in foods that actually helps you lose fat. So basically, just I'm assuming all of your subscribers probably know, but flexible dieting is really a way of dieting where you include all kinds of foods. So you're not restricting foods, but instead you're putting a cap on your macronutrient targets for the day or your calorie goal for the day or what have you. And why this is good is because it's more sustainable over time. So if you can have a little bit of frozen yogurt or fit in a chocolate bar or something like that into your daily macros, it becomes a lot easier to adhere to the plan, right? Like just imagine if you had to eat your, like you said, chicken and brown rice all day, every day for the rest of your life, it would be a pretty miserable life as far as food is concerned, right? But if you can have, chicken and rice one day, the next day you might have steak and potato, the next day you might have a protein and oatmeal, like you can have, if you go out, you could have like a flatbread pizza or something like that, right? There's all sorts of different foods that you can have and still get progress. So that's the main advantage I see in flexible dieting, is that it just allows the athlete to understand what it is that's actually doing the work, right? It's like earlier we said, oh yeah, a famous bodybuilder might eat 8 meals a day, but it's not actually the 8 meals part that's doing the work. It's his macros,
Yeah,
right? So you might follow this chicken and rice meal plan, but that isn't what's getting you the results. It's the fact that it has this many macros in it, right? So that's important. And then also people just tend to stick to it better.
yeah,
Like people
exactly.
just tend to stick to flexible diets better.
Yeah. Now, see here, when I get clients, right? So what I do is I give them a meal plan, and I think even you do the same thing, and I give them the macros and maybe the food choices that they can
Yep.
have, right? Right. But the problem is people are not informed enough about tracking calories, right? They from the day they started lifting, all they were told is like have 5 meals or 6 meals in a gap of 3 hours. Like every 3 hours you have to eat a meal and eat clean, right? Eat clean. Now there comes a point when if you have to lose weight or lose fat, you have to stay at a deficit. What they forget is if you eat more than what your body needs, there is that you won't be losing fat even though you are eating healthy, right? So
Mhm.
how important do you think tracking calories is? Forget about the macros and stuff. Tracking calories using an app like MyFitnessPal, and how it can help, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that eating quote unquote healthy is important, right? Like I think you shouldn't be that person who follows the caricatured version of if it fits your macros, you just drink whey protein and eat Pop-Tarts all day, which is what a lot of people think when they hear flexible dieting. They're like, oh, isn't that like just eating Pop-Tarts all day? But I don't think that that's how you should do it, and I don't really think that's how most people do it. So I do similar to you. I have a list, a pretty long list of foods that people can have. They're typically, if they're carbs, they're high fiber or they're high in vitamins and minerals, things like fruits, veggies, whole grains, stereotypical,
Yeah,
quote
raw
unquote
food.
clean foods, but there's nothing really left out there, and they know that if once in a while they want to have something a little bit junky, then that's okay. It's not going to hurt their progress. And then for protein, you have egg whites, chicken, whey, milk, everything. That's a
Yes.
protein source. And then for fats, I have, cheese, nuts, oils, and then occasional sweets, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Um, so as far as how important tracking calories is, It really, I think, depends on the person. If you have someone who, say, is way overweight and is totally new to this lifestyle, they might actually be overwhelmed, and it might be unproductive to tell them you need to track all these macros and you need to download this app and create a profile and all this stuff. It might just be too much all at once, right? So for someone like that, I would say focus instead on just making habit changes or lifestyle changes. So oftentimes when you talk to someone like this, you can say, okay, look at your day and look at what you're eating and look at what you do from day to day that is really adding up. Usually there's something in there. It's like a bag of chips at night, or if they're having a can of Pepsi on their lunch break. There's something in there that is giving them calories that they don't need. And so what I encourage them to do is keep a food diary for a week if you can, to have a look at what you're doing. You don't have to put it in MyFitnessPal. You can, but you can just write it out. So write down for breakfast, I had I don't know, bacon and egg sandwich or whatever, and then just record what you had every day, for the day, every day, and then just look at it and be like, okay, maybe I don't need to have that chocolate bar with lunch, and that would be an easy way for me to slash 200 calories off. So for those sorts of people, that's generally what I encourage them to do if their goal is to lose weight. Oftentimes just saying stop drinking root beer with every meal will be enough to get people losing weight and making progress. Then once they're making progress, there'll probably come a point where just getting rid of the root beer won't be enough, and they'll have to do something else. It's at that point that I'll say, okay, maybe you should try downloading this app now and start tracking what you're doing a little bit more closely, right? Now, if you have someone who's more experienced than that, so say you have someone who's done meal plans, maybe they've even done a bodybuilding show, but they're new to flexible dieting, in that case, I would say, yeah, you should make the jump, because it might be a little bit like annoying at first. Like you're like, oh, I've got to track everything in my phone. But after a while, it just becomes something you do. Like it takes me like 5 or 10 minutes a day to track everything in my phone. And then I kind of know what I'm eating. If not, I'm sort of shooting in the dark, or I have to follow a meal plan. And I think both of those alternatives are worse than just taking 5 or 10 minutes and tracking it in your phone. Exactly. Another thing that a lot of people hear when they hear flexible dieting or tracking calories or macros is that you have to track everything. So like you have to have your spinach weighed out on the scale, like you need to track like your water, like you need to track all of everything right down to the gram. And it doesn't have to be like that. If you're a competitive bodybuilder who's like late in your prep, like say you're in your like last 4 weeks of prep, then you need to get really specific and get really precise. Otherwise, you can have a pretty big margin of error. You just have to have a general ballpark of where you are for calories, and I think that MyFitnessPal is probably the best way to do that right now.